Hey guys, it's Istebrak. So this month I am talking about my latest study, which is it was a pretty difficult study for me to work with because I was aiming for something similar to my recent pieces in the detail level, especially after spending so long painting men. So I did paint another male, which I wouldn't say is a polished, completed study, especially one that I didn't want to show you guys. I wanted to show you something a little bit more complete. I do a lot of side studies that I never complete, but this is something that I would consider a complete study. Still a study, still generally incomplete, but definitely a way for me to flex my muscles a little bit, but at the same time educate myself with the experience. One of the biggest issues that I found myself dealing with this piece is handling the perspective, and I feel like the face's perspective doesn't match the head. Especially if I'm looking at the top piece. So why I added my finished piece towards the top this time is to show you how the perspective is just a little bit off now that we're zoomed out. And I also wanted to show you another really difficult thing for me to manage with this piece, especially because the month I was going through was so stressful and things were everywhere. It was hard to just force myself to sit down. And every time that I did reintroduce myself to my dashboard again and get into the painting process, get comfortable with my stream, get into the flow. The flow is very important. It was a different face at the end of each session. So that was something I was dealing with very, very much. I felt like I was meeting her. I was getting to know her. And I didn't feel, she didn't feel familiar till I completed finally reached like the last hour of the process. Then I really felt like I knew her. Everyone loved this stage. Everyone loved this stage, and 2 hours from now, everyone loved this stage at the very end. But I didn't love this stage until the very end. I didn't like the face. It didn't feel familiar to me. It didn't feel right to me, and I was always struggling with the likeness. Contrast was another thing I was struggling with. I feel like I really just forgot how to envision the desired contrast. I feel like last year I did a much better job at being able to manage the black and white presence early on in the painting and not depend on the contrast filter. This time I did depend on the contrast filter, which was a little bit disappointing for me, but I kind of just gave myself a break since it was a very stressful month and a half, and I was having a lot of trouble just managing the concentration between blocking and how much I was blending away and how much I was keeping. I was having an issue with just deciding on how polished I wanted the head and how polished I wanted the body. I really liked that early stage blocking, that messy sketch feeling, but also it was supposed to be a piece for you guys. It was supposed to be something a little bit more complete, something that, again, I flex my abilities to render a little bit, see how far I can go. And test myself. All of that was very, very difficult to manage all at the same time, and I was feeling a shake in my faith in my abilities, absolutely, with this piece, because it just keeps going back and forth. I'd add the pupils and the iris and take them out, add them back in, take them out, shift the eye back. I didn't want her eyes to be so far apart. I liked that alien touch, that alien type of a natural beauty. I love that. But also I couldn't just keep the face at a point where I half liked it. I couldn't complete the painting unless I loved her. I actually knew who this person was. And that's the kind of relationship I have with my drawings sometimes, especially ones that are linked to a very, very emotional aspect of what I'm painting, or if I want to create someone, I want to create a being. And some really, I know it might be a little bit abstract to understand it, but who she was right now at this stage was just not someone who I had an emotional connection with. It was not someone that was familiar to me or I could empathize with. It wasn't a person. She wasn't a human. She was a drawing. She was a sketch, as if she didn't exist. And the girl at the end, the reason why I went for that, and I saved all the stages for you guys in this PSD, but the girl at the very end, the reason why I kept it is because I felt like I knew her. And that all sounds so crazy to you guys, I'm sure. And it has nothing to do with the technical aspect, but it absolutely does, because it's the difference between finishing a painting and not finishing it. Adding that extra hour of work, and I'm looking at this piece right now, I'm looking at the current stage. I don't know how I kept going, because I just hated who this character was. I'm sure all of you would have loved this character. I'm sure you guys would have kept this stage and worked off who she was at that moment. But she just looked too pretty, too conveniently perfect, and I wanted to messy up her face a little bit. I gave her that short upturned nose, or I kept it or made it a little bit more upturned. I didn't like the excessive size in the Cupid's bow, but I did like the accent, so I kept it. I liked the longer neck. She seemed a little bit more alien-like. But I got rid of the half eyebrow, sparse eyebrow look. She kind of felt a little sterile to me. The light eyes, as you know, I don't really paint blue eyes. I paint brown eyes. They kind of just have that human eyes feel. I'm not saying that people with blue eyes aren't human, but I'm saying there's a bit more tenderness in a drawing, especially if you're painting black and white. In color, colored eyes are great because they have that additive excitement to the focal point. It's just the you know, what I'm going for in the black and white is why I go for brown eyes. So as soon as I changed her eyes to brown, I started to recognize her, and I started to keep going. So if you do find yourself incapable of empathizing or liking your character, if you don't like who you're drawing, you can't finish it. You have to set it up so that you like who it is that you're making. It's a who. And it's not a what. When it comes to a face, a body is a what. A body is a thing. Whereas the face is a person, it's a who, it's a character, it's personality and expression, it's suffering and happiness, it's a stare, it's focus, it's love or madness. It's so much invested in just a portrait, which is why I've always been drawn to portraiture over anything else. Everything else is just radial shading and edges, but with a face, it's so much design responsibility and design force expected out of you. So what I'm doing here with this portrait is I am trying to do that. I'm trying to recognize the person I'm drawing. I'm trying to recognize who it is that I'm aiming for. And that was the biggest struggle, is that I didn't know until she appeared. And I almost gave up on the painting. So that's a lesson for you. Try to explore the character before you give up on them. Rearrange their face just a bit. So in a second you'll see me you know, rearrange some of the features. One of the features that I changed was I made her eyes more hooded, not so deep set and not so high. I kept her mouth, I kept that Cupid's bow, but I also thickened her upper lip just a little bit. The nose, I kept trying to perfect the perspective on the nose as much as possible. That was a very, very big one. The lower eyelids, she was a little bit too young. I feel like I add age to characters as I age. So I didn't feel like I was looking in a mirror, but at the same time meeting someone new. That's artists do that a lot. Of course, we use our faces a lot. I think that was part of the familiarity that I was going for. I was going for someone that looked a bit like me, but had their own independent features. So again, see, like the messiness, I really loved it, but I just didn't want to keep it because I knew I was going for someone more polished. I wanted to complete the creation process. So the dark circles under her eyes and the eye bag, which I love doing, I added those in to make her a little bit more distinguished. I also added a very, very slight mustache, if you can see. Again, I'm taking away from that perfect porcelain polish that is non-human, sterile, almost creepy, sickly beautiful. And I'm adding real, believable, warm flaws to her character, and until I recognized her. So the theme pretty much for, you know, the difficulties I faced with this painting is just motivation and inspiration. That I wasn't motivated or inspired to complete the painting because I didn't know who I was looking at, and I wanted to know who I was looking at. And it's, as you can see, that at this stage it looks nothing like the finish. And I was feeling that as I was painting. There was a lot of anxiety, a lot of struggle, a lot of back and forth. I'd finish the session and I'd be like, oh my god, I've streamed for 3 hours and there was no progress whatsoever. I'd stream again, no progress. I'd stream again one more time and there was like a slight bit of progress because the eyes seemed to stare in the way I wanted. But they still weren't perfect, and the eyes eventually start looking towards the top right above our heads, but right now they're looking down at us completely, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that focused stare. I wanted something a little bit more off-center. So there were so many aspects I had to reorganize, but I would never have finished the painting if I hadn't made the mistakes that had to be reorganized. So the point here is show up to your canvas, even if you're painting someone who you don't know, who you don't like, who you don't want to even explore. Keep exploring, see what it is about them, and then shift it. Adjust the features until you recognize them, until you fall in love with your painting. There is a certain level of self-admiration that's necessary for an artist. We can't always be ruthlessly humble with ourselves, and not understand that, yes, there is an ego we have to appeal to when we're painting, and that is our own ego. I mean, it's a healthy amount of ego, I hope, and it's not something where everything you paint is perfect. For me to have reached that quote-unquote perfect stage in the top left here in the preview, I went through a lot of adjustment. I'd paint and adjust, I'd paint and adjust. No brushstroke was final. So yes, it's good to listen to yourself and believe yourself. That's what I mean by ego. To trust that you are doing what it is that you're supposed to be doing, to trust your instinct and the fact that it's just not impressing me. I'm not impressed currently by the stage in the painting. Even though the audience will tell you your art is amazing, if you're not impressed, it's done. You have to keep going. Trust yourself. But also don't be so adamant against adjusting decisions that you made early on. Trust yourself, but understand that you are susceptible to mistakes, and adjusting those mistakes is how you can move toward completing the painting and finding out who it is that you were seeing in your mind's eye. So when I paint, I believe that when we paint, we are painting something we're already seeing that we don't know we're seeing. She's starting to come to life, as you can see, and I'm so proud of this moment. There are so many mistakes in this piece, but I'm very proud of the moment that she started to feel familiar to me. That's when it was the point of no return. I was hooked in. I had to finish the drawing. It gave me motivation to finish every other aspect of the painting. It gave me motivation to finish the hair, to keep exploring her face a little bit more, thickening her eyebrows a bit. Again, she became more and more familiar, but she's a little bit flawed as well. Very beautiful in her own flawed way, and that's the kind of portrait I aim for. And I feel like that matures more and more as I get older, as I explore my, complete my art journey, or go further and develop my art journey. It was a struggle. It was a very extreme struggle. Yes, I did have a cigarette on her. I was adjusted her mouth for it and everything. I was going for something a little bit more symbolic. I removed the cigarette because it kind of drew away from her eyes, and I didn't want that to happen. She also started to look a little bit sickly, and that started to just send off another message. But it was extremely cathartic to have finished drawing the cigarette. I feel like I drew the cigarette and then I finished this version of the painting, and that was the satisfaction that I needed. I didn't need to publish it with the cigarette, but the cigarette will always be a permanent part, a permanent staple in this painting's experience for me, and my experience with this painting. I just hope that you guys start having a little bit more faith in your instinct, because my instinct is the reason why this painting is finished, and now I have another portfolio piece to add to my collection, another opportunity to show my skill and where I am and what I do. So have faith in in what you believe is the end goal. I know that we all have that moment where we just doubt every single choice we make, and sometimes it's crippling to the point we throw paintings away. And yes, I'm guilty of that, but I have been throwing paintings away less and less. I used to throw paintings away all the time, but I've been throwing paintings away less and less. I didn't feel like I'm at the point where I don't feel like I'm any more in danger of not being able to fix a painting, especially because I critique, and I do critique hour all the time. I've started to build a faith. Have faith in the critique. Have faith in the fact that the painting can transform into something else. So every time I start up the painting for a new session, I finished it the day before, 2-day break, 1-day break, I come back, and it's time to start the painting again. I pretend it's not my painting. That way I can have faith in the fact that it can transform into something better, the way I see my students' paintings transforming into something better. So it's just been a wonderful experience with this painting, and I'm so happy I get to share it with you guys. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for your patronage. You guys are amazing. You guys are wonderful. I really love your support while painting the paint. I'm sure some of you were attending the live streams and you're aware of what's been going on personally in my life. Every one of these submissions for Patreon and all the after hours that I publish is like a little diary for me, and I see how it all affected my art as I went along, how it all affected how I transformed. Every painting is a time capsule for my once present emotional state, and I digest it all by painting. But yeah, I'll see you guys next month. Bye guys.